What would you do if your own son locked your bedroom door and told you that you were not leaving his house until you accepted his rules? I did not fight, did not shout, did not beg. By sunrise, all I needed was one old deed and a quiet truth. The house he tried to rule had never belonged to him at all. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. My name is Kai Dornil. I am 63 years old, and I have one arm. The other one I left behind in a logging yard 28 years ago, crushed under a load of wet pine that should have been chained better. The company paid me a settlement after 2 years of legal back and forth, and I used every dollar to buy this house. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a front porch that catches the morning light, and a backyard where I planted 2 cherry trees the first spring I owned the place. I paid for this roof with my body and years of labor, but if you asked my son, Grant, he would tell you a different story. He would say I am lucky he lets me stay here. This morning started the way most mornings do now. I woke up before 6, the stump of my left arm aching in the cold, and I lay in bed listening to the house wake around me. Grant's alarm went off in the master bedroom down the hall, the one that used to be mine before he and his wife, Isla, moved in 3 years ago. I heard her groan, heard him laugh at something on his phone, heard the shower start. I waited until I could not hear them anymore. Then I got up and went to the kitchen. I make coffee with one hand. It takes longer than it used to, but I have learned. I measure the grounds, fill the pot, press the button. The machine hums and drips, and I stand at the counter with my mug, trying not to take up too much space. Isla came in while I was pouring, already dressed in her dental clinic scrubs, her hair pulled back tight. "Morning," I said. She did not answer right away. She opened the fridge, frowned at the milk carton I had left on the counter, and put it back inside with a loud sigh. "Kai, can you please just put things away when you are done? I do not have time to clean up after you every morning." "Sorry," I said. "I was going to put it back." She did not look at me. She poured herself a glass of orange juice and leaned against the sink, scrolling through her phone. I took my coffee and moved toward the table, but she spoke again without looking up. "Grant wants to talk to you later. About the house." "What about it?" "Just about how things are working. He will tell you." I nodded and sat down. My mug was warm in my hand, and I focused on that. The heat against my palm, the smell of the coffee. Isla finished her juice, rinsed the glass, and left the room. I heard her heels on the hardwood, the jangle of her keys, the front door opening and closing. The house was quiet again. Grant came in a few minutes later. He is 35, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who fills a room without trying. He runs a small renovation business, mostly handyman jobs and weekend flips, and he is always talking about his plans to be a landlord, to own properties, to build something bigger. He poured himself coffee and stood at the counter, looking at his phone. "Hey, Dad," he said, not looking up. "We need to sit down tonight. Isla and I have been talking, and there are some things we need to go over." "What kind of things?" He glanced at me, then back at his phone. "Just logistics, bills, space, responsibilities. You know how it is. The people who pay more of the bills get more say in how things run. That is just how it works." I did not answer. I sipped my coffee and watched him. He was smiling, the way he does when he thinks he has said something clever, something that cannot be argued with. "Anyway," he said, "we will talk tonight. Do not worry about it." He left the kitchen, and I sat there alone, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of his truck starting in the driveway. The house settled around me, and I thought about the words he had used. The people who pay more of the bills. As if I had not paid for every beam and shingle of this place. As if my name was not on the deed. But I did not say any of that. I just finished my coffee and rinsed the mug and put it in the dish rack, careful not to leave it on the counter. Later that afternoon, I was sitting in my chair in the living room, the old recliner I bought 15 years ago, when Grant came back in with a tape measure and a notebook. He did not ask me to move. He just started measuring the walls, writing numbers down, talking to himself about square footage and layouts. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just planning," he said. "Isla and I are thinking about rearranging some things. Make the space work better." "What does that mean?" He looked at me, still holding the tape measure. "It means we want the house to feel more like ours, you know? More modern, more functional." "It is functional now," I said. He smiled, the same smile from the kitchen. "Sure, Dad, but there is always room for improvement." He moved my chair to the corner, against the wall, without asking. He dragged it with one hand, the legs scraping on the floor, and then he went back to measuring. I sat there in the new spot, tucked away, and I felt the walls closing in. That evening, after dinner, I stepped out onto the front porch. The air was cool, the sky fading to purple, and I could hear voices inside. Grant and Isla were talking in the living room, and their words drifted through the open window. "We can turn his room into an office," Isla was saying, "once he moves out, or maybe a nursery if we ever get there." "Yeah," Grant said. "We just need to figure out the timeline. I do not want to rush it, but we also cannot wait forever. This is our house now." I stood on the porch and listened, my hand on the railing, and I did not say anything. I just looked out at the street, at the cherry trees in the yard, at the house I had built a life in. And I thought about the metal box under my bed, the one with the old papers inside, and I wondered how long I could keep pretending I did not hear the things they said. That night, after they went to bed, I lay awake and listened to the house. I heard Grant laugh at something on his phone. I heard Isla talking about painting the hallway. I heard them plan a future that did not include me, and I felt the weight of it pressing down, heavier than any load of pine. And I thought about the deed, the one with my name on it, the one they did not know I still had. I did not always live small. There was a time when I had 2 arms and a steady paycheck, and a future that felt like mine. That time ended on a Tuesday morning in October 28 years ago, when a chain snapped and a load of wet pine logs rolled off a flatbed truck and crushed my left arm against a steel post. I remember the sound more than the pain at first, a crack like a tree splitting, and then the shouting, and then the long, strange silence as I looked down and understood that the thing pinned under the wood was part of me. They airlifted me to a hospital 2 hours away. The doctors tried to save the arm, but the damage was too deep, the bones shattered, the nerves gone. They took it off just above the elbow, and I woke up in a white room with a stump wrapped in bandages and a future I did not recognize. The company fought the settlement for 2 years. They said I had not followed safety protocol, that I had been standing in the wrong place, that the accident was my fault. My lawyer, a tired man with a briefcase full of identical cases, told me to be patient, to let the process work. So I waited. I went to rehab 3 times a week, learning to button a shirt with one hand, to tie my shoes, to pour a cup of coffee without spilling it everywhere. I sat in waiting rooms with other broken men, all of us trying to figure out how to live in bodies that did not work the way they used to. Grant was 7 years old when it happened. He did not understand at first. He would ask me, when my arm was coming back, if the doctors could fix it, if I would be normal again. I told him it was gone for good, and he cried, not because he felt sorry for me, but because he was angry. He wanted his father back, the one who could throw a football and carry him on his shoulders and fix things around the house without asking for help. The man I became after the accident was not the man he wanted. When the settlement finally came through, it was less than I had hoped for, but more than I had ever seen in one place. After the lawyer took his share and the hospital took theirs, I had enough to buy a house. Not a big one, not fancy, but mine. I found this place on a quiet street near the edge of town, 3 bedrooms, and a yard with space for a garden. I signed the papers, moved in, and planted 2 cherry trees in the back. I thought maybe I could build something here, something stable, something that would last. Grant grew up in this house. He had his own room, painted blue, with posters of athletes and cars on the walls. He brought friends over, played basketball in the driveway, complained about chores and homework, and all the normal things teenagers complain about. I worked whatever jobs I could find, one-armed and slow but reliable, and I paid the mortgage on time every month. I kept the roof patched and the furnace running and the grass cut. I made this place a home. When Grant was 22, he moved out. He rented an apartment with some friends, started his handyman business, met Isla at a bar downtown. They got married 2 years later, a small ceremony at a community center, and I paid for the reception because they could not afford it. I was proud of him. He was building a life, making his own way, and I thought that was what a father was supposed to want. Then, 3 years ago, they lost their apartment. The landlord sold the building, and the new owner doubled the rent, and Grant and Isla could not keep up. Grant called me one night, his voice tight, and asked if they could stay with me for a few months, just until they got back on their feet. I said yes, without hesitation. I cleared out the second bedroom, moved my tools and boxes into the garage, and told them to take as much time as they needed. They moved in with 2 suitcases and a mattress tied to the roof of Grant's truck. Isla smiled and thanked me and said they would pay me back for the help. Grant shook my hand and said he appreciated it, that it was only temporary. I believed them. The first few months were fine. They paid a small amount toward utilities, helped with groceries, kept to themselves. But over time, something shifted. Grant started talking about the house as if it were his, making plans for renovations, rearranging furniture without asking. Isla started leaving notes on the counter about things I needed to fix or clean, her handwriting sharp and impatient. They stopped saying thank you. They stopped asking permission. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, the house stopped feeling like mine. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself they were under stress, that they needed space to figure things out, that I should be patient. But then Grant started talking to friends and neighbors as if he owned the place. He would stand in the driveway with his tool belt on, gesturing at the roof, saying things like, "Yeah, I am thinking about reshingling next summer," or, "We are planning to expand the kitchen," and people would nod and congratulate him, and I would stand on the porch with my one arm and my silent mouth and wonder when I had become invisible. One night, about a year after they moved in, I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea, and I heard Grant on the phone in the living room. He was talking to someone about the house, his voice loud and confident. "Yeah, we will probably flip it eventually," he was saying. "The market is good right now. My dad does not need all this space anyway. We will figure something out." I sat there with the mug in my hand, the steam rising into my face, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a quiet understanding that my son saw me as a problem to be solved. I did not sleep well that night. I lay in bed and listened to the house creak and shift, and I thought about the deed, the one I had signed almost 3 decades ago, the one with my name on it in black ink. I thought about the settlement money, the years of pain and rehab, the price I had paid to own this place. And I thought about Grant, standing in the driveway, talking about flipping my house as if it had always been his. The morning after I heard Grant on the phone, I woke up with a decision already made. I did not know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I could not keep living like this, shrinking into corners, pretending I did not hear the things they said. I got dressed, made coffee, and waited for Grant and Isla to leave for work. When the house was quiet, I went to my bedroom and opened the metal box I keep under the bed. Inside were old papers, things I had not looked at in years. My discharge papers from the hospital, the settlement agreement, a few photos of Grant as a kid, and at the bottom, a photocopy of the deed to the house, yellowed and creased but still readable. I held it in my hand, my name printed at the top, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not courage exactly, just clarity. I folded the deed and put it in my jacket pocket. Then I went to the kitchen and found the card Dana Ricks had given me 2 months ago. Dana is a social worker at the community support office, someone I had met by chance when I went in to ask about services for older people living alone. She had been kind, patient, and she had told me something I did not forget. If you ever feel like someone is trying to push you out of your own home, she had said, you have rights. No one can force you to leave a house you own. Not even family. At the time, I had nodded and thanked her and put the card in a drawer, but now I pulled it out and I dialed her number. She answered on the 3rd ring. Community support, this is Dana. Hi, Dana. This is Kai Dornil. We spoke a couple months ago. Oh, hi, Kai. How are you? I need to talk to someone about my house. There was a pause, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. Okay. Do you want to come in today? I have an opening at 2. Yes, I said. I will be there. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, the card still in my hand, and I felt the weight of what I was about to do. This was not just asking questions. This was taking a step, making a choice, and there would be no going back once I started. At 2 o'clock, I walked into the community support office, a low brick building near the library. Dana was waiting for me in a small room with a desk and 2 chairs. She smiled when I came in, but her eyes were serious. Thanks for coming, Kai. Tell me what is going on. I sat down and told her. I told her about Grant and Isla moving in 3 years ago. I told her about the way they talked about the house as if it were theirs, the way they made plans without asking, the way Grant had said on the phone that he would flip the place eventually. I told her about the locked door I expected might come, the feeling that I was a guest in my own home. Dana listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and nodded slowly. Kai, do you own this house? Is your name on the deed? Yes, I said. I bought it almost 30 years ago. I have never transferred the deed or added anyone else to it. Then legally, that house is yours. Your son has no claim to it unless you give him one. He cannot sell it, mortgage it, or force you to leave. Do you understand that? I think so. Okay. She pulled a notepad toward her and wrote something down. Here is what I want you to do. First, go to the town land records office and get a current copy of the deed, just to confirm everything is in order. Then I want you to talk to a property lawyer. There is a man named Victor Hale who does good work with elder housing issues. I'm going to give you his number. She wrote down the address and phone number and slid the paper across the desk. I took it, folded it carefully, and put it in my pocket next to the old deed. Kai, she said, her voice softer now, I know this is hard. This is your son, but you deserve to feel safe in your own home. You deserve respect. Do not let anyone take that from you. I nodded, and I felt something tighten in my throat. I did not trust myself to speak, so I just stood up and shook her hand. Thank you, I said. Call me if you need anything, she said. I mean it. I left the office and walked to my truck, the paper with Victor Hale's number folded in my pocket, and I felt like I was carrying something heavy and fragile at the same time. This was real now. This was happening. That evening I went next door to see Nora Elgin. Nora is 68, a widow who has lived in the house next to mine for as long as I have been here. She is the kind of neighbor who notices things, who checks in without being nosy, who brings over soup when she thinks you might need it. I knocked on her door, and she opened it with a smile. Kai, come in. Come in. I just made tea. I followed her into her living room, a warm space filled with books and quilts and the smell of cinnamon. She poured 2 cups of tea and sat down across from me, her hands wrapped around her mug. What is on your mind? She asked. I told her. Not everything, but enough. I told her about Grant and Isla, about the way they had taken over the house, about the things I had overheard. I told her I had gone to see Dana, that I was going to check the deed, that I was thinking about talking to a lawyer. Nora listened, her face calm, and when I finished, she set down her mug and leaned forward. Kai, I remember when you bought that house. I remember you planting those cherry trees in the back. I remember you out there every weekend, fixing the fence, painting the porch, making it yours. Do not let anyone tell you that place does not belong to you. I do not want to fight with my son, I said. I know, she said. But sometimes the only way to stop a fight is to stand your ground. I nodded, and I felt the tightness in my throat again. Nora reached across the table and put her hand on mine, her grip warm and steady. You are not alone in this, she said. If you need anything, call me. Any time. I mean it. Thank you, I said. I stayed a little longer, drinking tea and talking about nothing important, and then I went back to my house. Inside, Grant and Isla were in the living room, watching something on the TV. They did not look up when I came in. I went to my bedroom, closed the door, and opened the metal box again. I took out the old deed and stared at it, the ink faded but still clear, and I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, exactly, but determination. That night, I lay in bed and listened to Grant and Isla talking in the other room. I could not hear the words, but I could hear the rhythm of their voices, confident and easy, the way people sound when they think they have already won. But they had not won. Not yet. The town land records office is a small gray building downtown, wedged between a bank and a laundromat. I parked my truck across the street and sat there for a few minutes, watching people go in and out, and I felt the weight of what I was about to do. This was not just checking a piece of paper. This was arming myself with proof, with something solid I could hold on to when the ground under me felt like it was shifting. I got out of the truck and walked inside. The office was quiet, the air cool and smelling faintly of old paper and floor wax. A woman sat behind the counter, middle-aged, glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked up when I approached and smiled. Can I help you? I need a copy of the deed for my house, I said. Sure, I will need the address and your ID. I gave her both, and she typed something into her computer, her fingers quick on the keys. After a moment, she nodded. Okay, I have got it here. It will be $5 for a certified copy. I paid with a crumpled bill from my wallet, and she disappeared into a back room. I stood at the counter, my hand resting on the wood, and I tried to breathe slowly. A few minutes later, she came back with a single sheet of paper, crisp and official-looking, with a raised seal in the corner. Here you go, she said, sliding it across the counter. I took it and looked down. My name was there, printed in bold letters at the top. Kai Dornil, sole owner. No other names, no co-signers, just me. Thank you, I said. I folded the paper carefully and put it in my jacket pocket, and I walked out of the office into the bright afternoon light. I felt lighter somehow, as if I had been carrying a question I did not know how to ask, and someone had finally answered it. The next stop was Victor Hale's office. Dana had given me his address, a small suite above a hardware store on Main Street. I climbed the narrow stairs, the railing worn smooth under my hand, and found a door with a brass nameplate. Victor Hale, attorney at law, property and estate planning. I knocked, and a voice called out, "Come in!" Inside was a small office, cluttered but organized, with shelves full of law books and a desk piled with folders. Victor Hale sat behind the desk, a man in his mid-50s with gray hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when I entered and stood to shake my hand. "You must be Kai," he said. Dana called ahead. "Have a seat." I sat down in the chair across from him and pulled out the deed. He took it, studied it for a moment, and then nodded. "This is straightforward," he said. "The house is in your name, no mortgage, no liens. You are the sole owner, Your son has no legal claim to this property unless you transfer it to him. He thinks he owns it, I said, or at least he is acting like he does. Victor leaned back in his chair, his hands folded over his stomach. Unfortunately, that is not uncommon. Family members move in, they start paying bills, and they begin to feel entitled. But feelings are not the same as legal rights. This house is yours, Kai. You can do whatever you want with it. What are my options? He pulled a legal pad toward him and started writing. Well, you have a few. 1, you can create a life estate, which would allow you to live here for the rest of your life and specify what happens after. 2, you can draft a will or trust that clearly states your wishes. 3, if the situation becomes untenable, you can legally evict your son and his wife. They are tenants, not owners, even if they are paying some of the bills. The word evict hit me like a weight. I had not thought of it that way before. My son, a tenant. I do not want to evict him, I said. Not yet. I just want to protect myself. I want to make sure he cannot sell the house or force me out. Victor nodded. Then what I recommend is this. We draft a document that reaffirms your sole ownership and makes it clear that any sale, mortgage, or transfer requires your explicit consent. We can also specify that your son and daughter-in-law are guests with revocable permission to stay. If things escalate, we can move forward from there. How long will that take? I can have it ready by the end of the week. You will need to sign it, and I will keep a copy on file. After that, it is just a matter of making sure everyone understands the terms. I nodded slowly. Okay, let us do it. Victor smiled, a small, reassuring smile. Good. You are doing the right thing, Kai. This is your house. Do not let anyone take that from you. I left his office with a plan, something concrete, and I felt like I could breathe again. I drove to the diner on the highway, the one with the faded sign and the booths that smell like coffee and bacon grease. I ordered a sandwich and sat by the window, watching the cars go by, and I thought about what Victor had said. Your son and daughter-in-law are guests with revocable permission to stay. It was strange, thinking of Grant that way. A guest. Someone who could be asked to leave. But it was also true, and the truth had a weight to it, something solid I could hold on to. I was finishing my sandwich when the waitress came by to refill my coffee. She was young, maybe 30, with tired eyes and a name tag that said Brenna. You doing okay, hun? She asked. Yeah, I said, just thinking. She glanced out the window, then back at me. You know, I saw your son in here the other day. He was talking to some guy about houses, flipping properties. Said he was going to sell his place soon. I looked up at her, and she shrugged. Sorry, I did not mean to eavesdrop, but I thought you should know. Thank you, I said. She walked away, and I sat there with my coffee, the words echoing in my head. He was going to sell his place soon. Not our place, not my father's place, his place. I paid the bill and drove home, the deed and Victor's card in my pocket, and I felt the weight of what was coming. This was not over. This was just beginning. Victor called me 3 days later. His voice on the phone was calm, professional. Kai, the documents are ready. Can you come by today? I went that afternoon. The stairs to his office felt steeper this time, my legs heavy, but I climbed them and knocked on the door. Inside, Victor had a stack of papers on his desk, neatly organized, with colored tabs marking where I needed to sign. This is it, he said, handing me the first page. This document reaffirms that you are the sole owner of the property. It states that no sale, mortgage, or transfer can happen without your written consent. It also specifies that Grant and Isla are guests in your home with revocable permission to stay. If they violate the terms, you can ask them to leave, and if they refuse, we can pursue legal eviction. I read through the pages slowly, my finger tracing the lines. The language was formal, stiff, but the meaning was clear. This was my house, my rules, My decision. What happens if I sign this and they find out? I asked. They do not need to find out unless you want them to, Victor said. But if things escalate, you will have legal backing. If they threaten you, lock you out, or try to sell the house, this document protects you. I picked up the pen and signed my name on the dotted lines, one after another. My handwriting was shaky, but it was there. When I finished, Victor collected the papers, made copies, and handed one set back to me in a folder. Keep this somewhere safe, he said. And Kai, if things get bad, call me. Do not wait. I nodded, and I left his office with the folder under my arm. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have, as if I were carrying something that could explode if I dropped it. That night, I was in the kitchen making dinner when Grant came in. He looked tired, his shirt dusty from work, and he opened the fridge without saying hello. "Hey, Dad," he said, pulling out a beer. "We need to talk." "About what?" He leaned against the counter, the beer in his hand, and he looked at me with that same confident smile he always wore. "Isla and I have been thinking. We are meeting with a buyer next month. Someone interested in the house. We are going to sell." I stopped stirring the pot on the stove and looked at him. "Sell?" "Yeah. The market is good, and we can get a decent price. You will be fine. We will help you find a smaller place, something easier to manage. Maybe one of those senior apartments downtown." I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "Grant, we should all sit down soon. Look at the papers together." He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "What papers? I already know how this works. You bought the house years ago, but we have been paying most of the bills for the past 3 years. That gives us equity. We have talked to people. We know our rights." I did not answer. I just turned back to the stove and stirred the pot, the steam rising into my face. Grant stood there for a moment waiting for me to argue, but when I did not, he shrugged and left the room. I stood there alone, the wooden spoon in my hand, and I thought about the folder in my bedroom, the papers with my name on them, the proof that everything he had just said was wrong. Later that night, I went next door to see Nora. She opened the door in her bathrobe, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she smiled when she saw me. "Kai, it is late. Are you okay?" "I need to talk," I said. She let me in, and we sat in her kitchen with cups of tea. I told her about the documents I had signed, about Grant's plan to sell the house, about the way he had dismissed me when I mentioned looking at the papers. Nora listened, her hands wrapped around her mug, and when I finished, she shook her head. "He has no idea, does he?" "No," I said. "What are you going to do?" "I do not know yet, but I am ready now. I have the proof. I have the lawyer. If he pushes me, I will push back." Nora reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Good. You deserve that. And if you need me, I am right next door. Anytime, Kai, I mean it." I went back to my house and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Grant and Isla in the other room. They were laughing about something, their voices light and easy, and I felt the weight of what was coming. Around 2 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I sat up, my heart pounding, and I listened. The footsteps stopped outside my door. There was a long silence, and then I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. The door was locked from the outside. I got up and tried the handle. It did not move. I knocked softly at first, then louder. "Grant?" No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. "Grant, open the door." His voice came through the wood, calm and steady. "No, Dad, not until we talk. You are not leaving until we settle this. This is my house now, and you need to accept that." I stood there, my hand on the door, and I felt something cold and heavy settle in my chest. Not fear, not anger, just a quiet, final understanding. He had crossed the line. I did not shout, I did not beg. I just walked back to my bed, sat down, and waited. The folder with the documents was under my mattress, and I pulled it out, holding it in my lap. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten, the first pale glow of dawn creeping through the window. By sunrise, I heard footsteps again. Grant was pacing in the hallway, and then I heard him go to the kitchen. I heard drawers opening, things being moved around. He was looking for something, and then I heard him swear under his breath. He had found the metal box. He was looking at the old deed. The key turned in the lock, and the door swung open. Grant stood in the hallway, his face pale, the old metal box in his hand. He looked at me, then at the box, then back at me. "What is this?" he said, his voice tight. "It is the deed to the house," I said. "The original one, from when I bought it. I know what it is." He held it up, his hand shaking slightly. "Why did not you tell me you still had this?" "You never asked." He stared at me, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, the realization dawning. He stepped into the room, and Isla appeared behind him, her eyes wide. "What is going on?" she asked. "He has the deed," Grant said. "His name is on it, not ours." Isla looked at me, then at the box, and her face went pale. "But we have been paying the bills. We have equity." "No," I said quietly. "You have been guests." Grant dropped the box on the bed and ran a hand through his hair. "This does not make sense. We have been living here for 3 years. We have put money into this place. That has to count for something." "It does not," I said. "Not legally." "How do you know?" he demanded. I reached under my mattress and pulled out the folder Victor had given me. I handed it to Grant and he opened it, his eyes scanning the pages. His face went from pale to red as he read, and when he looked up at me, there was anger in his eyes. "You went to a lawyer? Behind my back?" "I went to protect myself," I said, "because you locked me in my own bedroom and told me I was not leaving until I accepted your rules, because you have been talking about selling my house without asking me, because you have treated me like I do not belong here." Isla stepped forward, her arms crossed. "We have been taking care of you, Kai. We have been paying for groceries, utilities, everything. We saved you." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I saved you. I let you stay here when you lost your apartment. I gave you a place to live, and you repaid me by treating me like a guest in my own home." Grant slammed the folder down on the bed. "This is insane. You cannot just kick us out. Where are we supposed to go?" "I am not kicking you out," I said. "Not yet, but I am setting boundaries. This is my house. My name is on the deed. If you want to stay, you will respect that. If you cannot, then you need to find somewhere else to live." Isla was shaking her head, tears in her eyes. "I cannot believe this. After everything we have done for you." "What have you done?" I asked. "You have paid some bills. You have lived here for free, but you have also made me feel like I do not belong. You have talked about me like I am a burden. You have planned to sell my house without my permission. That is not taking care of someone. That is taking over." Grant stared at me, his jaw tight, and I could see the anger boiling under the surface. But he did not shout. He just picked up the folder and walked out of the room, Isla following close behind. I sat on the bed, the old metal box beside me, and I listened to them in the living room, their voices low and urgent. I could not hear the words, but I could hear the tone, the disbelief and the anger, and I felt something settle in my chest, something heavy but solid. I had done it. I had stood my ground. An hour later, there was a knock on the front door. I heard Grant answer it, and then I heard a familiar voice. Victor Hale. I got up and walked to the living room. Victor was standing in the doorway, his briefcase in hand, and he looked at me with a small, reassuring smile. "Kai," he said, "I thought it might be good to go over things together, if everyone is ready." Grant looked at me, then at Victor, and he nodded slowly. "Yeah, let us do that." We sat down at the dining table, the 4 of us, and Victor pulled out a copy of the documents. He went through them slowly, explaining each point in clear, simple language. Grant and Isla listened, their faces growing paler with each sentence. "The house is in Kai's name," Victor said. "It always has been. No transfer has ever been made, no equity has been established by paying bills. Legally, Kai is the sole owner, and you are guests with revocable permission to stay." "What does that mean?" Isla asked, her voice small. "It means Kai has the right to ask you to leave at any time," Victor said. "If you refuse, he can pursue legal eviction, but I do not think it has to come to that." He pulled out another document, a single page, and slid it across the table. "This is a guest agreement. It outlines the terms of your stay here. You pay a set amount toward utilities and groceries. You respect Kai's space and his decisions. You do not make plans to sell, mortgage, or transfer the property. If you agree to these terms, you can stay. If not, Kai is within his rights to ask you to leave." Grant picked up the paper and read it, his lips moving silently. When he finished, he looked at me, and I could see the defeat in his eyes. "You really did this," he said. "You really went this far." "I had to," I said. "You left me no choice." Isla was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. "We did not mean for it to be like this. We just wanted to feel like it was our home too." "It is your home," I said. "But it is mine first. I bought it with my body and my years of work. I let you stay here because I love you, because you needed help. But love does not mean I have to give up my rights. It does not mean I have to let you treat me like I do not matter." Grant looked at the paper again, then at Victor. "And if we do not sign this?" "Then you find somewhere else to live," Victor said. "Kai has been more than patient, but this ends today." There was a long silence. Isla wiped her eyes, and Grant stared at the table, his hands clenched into fists. Finally, he looked up at me. "When do we have to decide?" I thought about the locked door, the sound of his voice saying I was not leaving until I accepted his rules. I thought about the years of disrespect, the plans to sell my house, the way they had made me feel like a burden. "Today," I said. Grant stood up, the chair scraping against the floor, and he walked to the front door. He stood there for a long moment, his hand on the handle, and then he turned back to look at me. "Fine," he said. "We will sign it. But do not expect things to go back to the way they were." "I do not," I said. "I just expect respect." Victor handed him a pen, and Grant signed the paper, his signature hard and angry. Isla signed next, her hand shaking, and then Victor collected the document and placed it in his briefcase. "I will file this with the county," he said. "Kai, you will get a copy in the mail. If there are any issues, call me." He stood, shook my hand, and left. The front door closed behind him, and the house was silent. Grant and Isla stood in the living room, not looking at me, and I felt the weight of what had just happened. This was not a victory. This was a boundary, a line drawn in the sand, and I did not know if they would ever forgive me for it. But I also did not care. This was my house. My name was on the deed. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe in my own home.